Hello, everybody. Oh, what a treat to be in a room full of polite people.
Yes.
Oh, this is my favorite. William, thank you for coming to New York.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for coming.
And congratulations. This is a big day.
It is, yes, publication day, and delighted to be here at the Strand. And if you have bought the book, thank you very much. You'll be hearing me say thank you quite a lot this evening, but also thank you to Nick, thank you to the Strand for hosting us as well.
So let's talk origin story. So I am curious, and I think a lot of us are, have you always been this way? When did this happen? How did this start?
Oh, there's an element already. Okay. Yes, no, I have always been uptight. In answer to your question, I think clearly Granny saw something in that, and as people may know, she was the one who gave me my very first etiquette book when I was 12, and I think she probably thought, not because I was a feral child, she gave me the book because I think she thought it would appeal to my precocity, which it did eventually, and she used to stay with us each Christmas and would say, "Have you read any of it yet?" And I was, no. So I remember opening it up in the middle of whatever chapter it was and thinking, well, I'll just read whatever it is. And actually it was very funny. And so that's what sort of propelled me to buy more books, but also it posed lots of questions. I wanted to know why we had to do certain things. It was all very well saying do X, but I wanted to know do X because. And that's where it started. And unlike all the academic subjects at school, I sort of was remembering these facts that I was picking up in these etiquette books. I could suddenly remember that actually, yes, for a buffet, a tablecloth should touch the floor, whereas anything they were trying to teach me at school was not going in.
And what book was it? What was that first book?
So that was the edition of Debrett's by John Morgan. So Debrett sort of there are different eras, as you know, Nick, and people here will know as well. And it was the blue cover one, John Morgan. It's still an absolute go-to for me. It's acerbic, it's catty, it's not in print, so don't worry about trying to get it. And it's such a good book.
So in the United States, we have Emily Post,
Yes.
Amy Vanderbilt, Letitia Baldridge, Judith Martin. I guess, who are the British equivalent?
Well, John Morgan, certainly, I mean, he sadly is no longer with us, and his story, I hope, is told at some point in a biography. It's very, very sad. We won't bring the mood down and go into it, but he's no longer with us. And so he sort of certainly was someone that was on the scene for a while. Debrett's, which is an organisation, it goes back to the 1700s, but only started doing etiquette books in the 1980s, is sort of the one that your average person in Britain probably will have heard of.
Okay, so that would be like the wedding present that you might get?
Yes, if you didn't like the couple. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. Some of their old stuff is a lot better than their new stuff.
And so now you're part of this pantheon. So what was it? Well, why did you write this book? Because this is not your first book.
No, this isn't my first book, but it's my first sort of proper book, I'm calling it, as it were. I mean, there was the Sexted book we did a few years ago, which is lovely and has a place, but this is a solo venture. And I wanted to write, well, actually, Debrett's, again, who some of their books are really, really good. And the handbook, is anyone familiar with the Debrett's handbook? It's a big beast of a book. It's sort of red and gold leaf. And it's a reference book. It's not like mine. It's not written in prose. It's a dip in and out. And my colleague at the English Manor, Joe Bryant, edited it in its previous era. And for the coronation of the king, they reissued it. And I thought, oh, well, they'll use this opportunity to sort of update the etiquette and put in some modern stuff, as well as sort of doing a find and replace for Queen and then making it King. And no, other than the Queen-King thing, they did nothing. And it was still, I can remember on page 204, at the bottom in a tiny little footnote, was something about Ms, MS, the honorific for female-identifying people that don't want to say whether they're married or not, because it's not relevant. And I thought, oh, come on. It's all very well. We've got 12 pages here on how to address the fourth youngest son of a duke, but we've got absolutely nothing for your average person. And we need an etiquette book that reflects life as it is today, that is useful for people today, and that's what I wanted to do in Just Good Manners.
Well, that's a good segue. Do you want to read a little passage that kind of talks about names?
Oh, yes. Would people like to hear that?
Yes.
Oh. You don't have a choice, so I'm glad you said yes. When I was writing, I thought, how do, because again, it's not a reference book, this is you can read it from cover to cover, you can then dip into it. And I thought, well, how do I do this without just doing a boring chart? So I came up with the idea of the story of Peter and the story of Jane. And it goes like so. When Peter pops into the world, he is styled as Master Peter Smith on envelopes and invitations, and Master Smith in formal speech, but realistically, just Peter. Over in the next hospital bed, Jane successfully made her way out of the birth canal and is now accorded the written style Miss Jane Jones or Jane in speech. In the old days, Peter would stop being a master and become a mister when he came of age, but you try calling a 15-year-old today master and see how they like it. This is a rule that has been adjusted, and now when a boy reaches the age of 12, it's probably safer to drop master. And so Mr. Peter Smith it is from this point on when he is written to and Mr. Smith in conversation. To make life easier for us, Peter is not the most academically gifted man, and so in the course of his life does not gain any medical qualifications or academic accolades. His honorific remains Mr., bypassing any chance to be a doctor of either variety or professor. Sorry, Peter. He therefore remains Mr. Peter Smith for the rest of his life. Jane, on the other hand, remains Miss Jane Jones and Miss Jones even once she comes of age. If she died without marrying, this is conventionally how she would be styled. But, and this is where it gets steamy, Peter and Jane have an accidental encounter one day, not knowing they both entered the world on the same day, just one bed apart. They bump into each other at the local petrol station. Gas station for our audience, and their eyes meet while Peter pumps unleaded into his hatchback. Told you. Jane's legs go all wobbly as she realizes that she is bored of filling her own tank each month and maybe needs someone to take turns with. She makes the first move and strikes up a conversation with Peter as they queue at the checkout waiting to pay. A coffee date soon follows, then a dinner and a cozy night in at Jane's watching The Shining, her choice. They both decide at very similar times that they are destined to be together forever. Jane beats Peter to it and proposes. Months go by as they plan their wedding, almost coming to blows with Jane's mother, who has very odd views on the font used for the orders of service. Then, once the celebrant has done their thing, the couple is styled together on paper as Mr. and Mrs. Peter Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith in conversation, and then, on her own, Jane becomes Mrs. Peter Smith in writing and Mrs. Smith in speech. She may have proposed and enjoy horror films, but Jane decides to take her husband's surname and has no problem with his first name being used in formal writing when they are dressed together. This is how they will be styled for the rest of their happily married life, including after their lovely 2.4 children are brought into this world. And it goes on, and there's stuff about what happens when Jane actually does decide to have a modern styling. For those that may have read, I don't want to spoil it, but they fall out of love and get divorced at one point. And Peter comes to a very sticky ending, and it's all in just good manners. Thank you.
I think this is something you definitely excel at, is how do we make the E word accessible? So actually, can we talk a little bit about the E word? It's a bad word out there.
It is a bad word. It's a controversial word, and for those that haven't cracked the code, we mean etiquette as a word. The book is called Just Good Manners. When it was published in the UK, the publisher there was sort of very firm on it not having etiquette anywhere on the front cover. I'm pleased to say it is on the back cover of the US edition, so that's nice. But Just Good Manners, it's a softer, more accessible word, and yeah, etiquette. For some people, it's an intimidating word. It's a great shame. It shouldn't be, but manners seem a lot softer.
So when you were approaching this book, how did you start? What was the thought process?
The thought process was, well, I went back and I did reread that John Morgan book that Granny gave me, because I thought if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be sitting here. And so I went there, and I was actually then reading it with a modern lens. I mean, I've read it numerous times, but there was quite a bit in it. You thought, well, you can't say that anymore. So I thought we'd get rid of that. And I wrote down all the things I liked about it and what I didn't. And then each chapter was written in the order that you see it in. And actually, I had finished the book and sent it off and hadn't. The last chapter is on last proper chapter. There's an appendix for the US edition, but the last proper chapter is on royalty. It is the smallest chapter in the book, I should stress. And I sent it off and said, I just don't think we can do a British book on etiquette and not mention the royal family. I think we have got to say something. We don't need to say too much. And actually, there is new content to talk about, because since most etiquette books have been published, what do we call 3 members of the royal family that may not be part of the royal family for different reasons? How if we do bump into them in Waitrose or Whole Foods, what do we call them? So I felt there was a new aspect to add.
And do we look to the royal family as examples of good etiquette? Because, I mean, historically, the royals, like when you think of Queen Victoria and the impact she had, like white wedding dresses, they were sort of setting the standard. Is this still true? Was it ever true?
I think it was certainly true back in the day, but and not necessarily the British. The French, obviously Louis XIV had a huge influence on etiquette, but I would yes and no. They're good examples of, if you've got no one to sort of look up to, I guess they're good examples of people to look. No, don't twist my words. That's not what I mean. But they are. I can see the headlines now. I'm going to talk about the ones that are still working members of the royal family. They are, generally, they're well turned out. They're nice. They can hold a conversation. They make eye contact with you. So yes, they may come from a different walk of life, but I think they're not terrible examples of who to look up to.
So tell me about fish forks in the royal household, and what's up with that?
Okay, so for those that don't know, fish cutlery or fish silverware. We say cutlery in Britain. Do you say cutlery? You don't say cutlery here.
Cutlery.
Silverware.
Silver if it's silver.
So fish cutlery, sort of late Victorian. The fork, it has a sort of divot in. There are other variants, but let's just go with the standard one. It has a little divot in it, and then the fish knife is relatively blunt and sort of shaped like a fish's tail. Was introduced by the Victorians as a way to fillet fish that were served on the bone, and back in the day, that was how fish was served. Today, most restaurants serve it off the bone, or at least you should. If you're ordering fish, please, no one wants to see an autopsy live at the table. So just say, does it come on or off the bone? And if the answer is off the bone, great. And if it's on the bone, just ask the kitchen if they can do their business in the kitchen. But yes, the Victorians invented this cutlery to help, in theory, you fillet it. There was also a difference in the metal that was used. The royal household does not have fish cutlery because their cutlery canteens predate the Victorian times. They go back to Georgian England. So they don't have them. They would also never serve fish on the bone anyway at a state banquet, so you can just use a normal knife and fork. But there is a bit of a snob thing in Britain. In Britain, we make everything a snob thing, sadly. But yes, there is a snob thing that if you have fish cutlery in your household, then it means you have bought your cutlery as opposed to inherited your cutlery. I always think, well, what are you meant to do until your parents die? Eat with your hands? So you've got to buy cutlery at some point, but I would actually say there is a reason you don't need fish cutlery, because you should be serving and eating and ordering fish off the bone anyway.
And what's up with the bread knife? They put it in a weird way, don't they?
Yes, the royal. So what was fascinating? So I can say this now. I spoke to a couple of people from the royal household for the book, because I thought, again, I want to write about what actually happens at state banquets. So there's not an awful lot about state banquets in there, but again, we've got to mention it. And so I spoke to a couple of the footmen, and I had 2 revelations. One, he asked, I don't think he troubled His Majesty, but he asked quite a lot of people in the royal household as to why their bread knife sits almost American style, sort of in the bread plate zone, but on the table rather than on the plate. In America, you would generally put it on the plate, but it sort of sits above. And I said, well, why? Because in Britain, that's not where we put our bread knives or butter spreaders, and literally nobody knew. I asked old members of staff, current members of staff, no one knew other than, well, that's just always how we've done it. So I suspect it's something that has fallen into, well, we just did it like that in 1066, so we'll just do it like that now. The other thing, which was a great revelation, was the use of chargers or service plates. Do we know what I mean with this? Of course you do, thank you. So a service plate in the centre of the setting, not traditionally used in Britain, but actually if you Google state banquet table setting, Buckingham Palace, up will come a picture, lovely pictures, including these silver gilt service plates. And of course anyone will go, well, hang on, you're saying there is no service plates are not correct in Britain, but look at them there on the state banquet table. And it's because, and I was so pleased with this, and it was so obvious, it's a bit like reading a murder mystery where you go, oh, the clues were there. All of those photographs are basically press photographs taken from when they open the palace each summer, and they do different exhibitions. And it's about 10 years ago now, they did a state banquet exhibition where they had the state ballroom set up with all this paraphernalia for a state banquet. And basically the Royal Collection Trust, different division to the actual footman, thought, well, basically let's bring out all the bling possible for the tourists and just stick it on the table, including these sort of very nice silver gilt plates, and stuck them there. But if you then actually look at photos of the table during a state banquet, there is no centre service plate. So we still don't. So I was right. I knew that. So it was nice to have that confirmed. And I can't tell you how excited I was. I had to stop writing for the day. I was so excited.
Back to bread for a second. At a formal meal, are we having bread? Is that happening?
Yeah, yes and no.
Because in the United States, we would not have like a bread roll at a formal dinner.
No, and it's completely impractical because you fill up on it as well now, and then you can't eat the rest of it. But yes, traditionally there was always sort of some sort of bread, or Melba toast was quite smart originally.
At a formal dinner, I'm having Melba toast?
Yeah.
Who wants that?
I served Melba toast to the late Queen. It's one of my proudest moments, yes.
All right, stand corrected.
I know. Our conversation went like this. Melba toast, ma'am? Thank you. We're very close.
I want to get you to tell a story. I want to take you to Switzerland.
Oh, yes, lovely.
So I get a text message from William, which is just like, oh, this thing happened. I'll tell you about it when I see you. So William, please share.
So I was off, and it's a story I've told on Sexted, but I'll share with you now for those that haven't heard it. I was off to visit IVP, which is the last remaining finishing school that still operates in Switzerland, just outside of Geneva. I had met the principal once before, but a long time ago. And in the process of writing this book, and there's a bit about finishing schools in the introduction, I thought I will go and just sort of talk to her, and good excuse to actually see the premises, make a connection. Maybe there's some business to be done. You never know. So I go, have a lovely time, very nice welcome. And on the following day, I'm flying back to the UK, and my old carpet bag that I have had for years, but was falling to pieces at Geneva Airport, gets pulled in for a routine security search. And it all passed. And as they hand it back to me, because the zip had broken, and they handed it back rather clumsily, all of the content, well, not all of the contents, but a lot of the contents, particularly the lighter contents, fell out. And they were very apologetic and were helping me put everything back. And they picked up my USB presentation pointer. You know, the ones that you have to just click on a presentation? And I've had that one for 10 years. It was £15 on Amazon years ago. And they said, what is this? I said, it's a USB clicker to click it on. They said, yes, and look, what is here at the top? It's a laser pointer, so you can point to a particular part on the screen. And I said, well, I explained what it was. And they said, yes, look on the back, it says Class 2 laser. These are illegal in Switzerland. You are in possession of a Class 2 laser. And I said to him, my good man, does it look like I'd have anything second class on me? And he didn't find that funny. So anyway, he said, look, I said, look, just throw it away and we'll move on. He said, no, I'm going to have to phone the police. So I was made to sit on a chair. The armed police come and take me into the bowels of Geneva Airport. And they take my passport off me, my belt, all my possessions, my mobile phone, and put me in a cell. I know. And they literally just shut the door. And eventually they bring in this sort of piece of paper saying rights and obligations of the accused that I've got to sign. It was all in French. I did eventually ask for an English version. And I just signed. I thought, I'm going to miss my flight. This is a complete inconvenience. And they then ask me all these questions. Do I have to pay? Am I in debt? Do I have to send any child support payments back to anyone in the UK? It's nice of them to ask, but, whatever. And we're going through this, and time is going on. I'm just abandoned in this cell, and I need the loo. So I had to sort of bang on the door to get their attention, which is an indignity of sorts. And eventually they came, and I said, "Look, can I use the loo?" And they said, "Oh yes," and they usher me to this another cell, which has got a hole in the ground. I thought, they haven't even given me the ensuite. Anyway, so I do that and go back, and lots of questions. The USB clicker is now in a evidence bag I had to sign. And long story short, I was eventually let go. Good old British Airways. We hadn't even boarded the flight, so I didn't miss it, even though I spent 2 hours in the cell. And they wrote to me latterly to say that I had a choice of fine. I could either pay a fine of 900 Swiss francs, which is about probably about $800, or I could serve a 4-day custodial sentence. I paid the fine. So please buy the book.
So I have had the luxury of being able to read this book because I got an advance copy. So I've read it cover to cover. And there were certain things that caught my eye that I need to discuss with you.
Okay.
And so one of the things that you mentioned is that in London, that it's very difficult to make plans with people. 11 weeks out is the number 11 weeks. That's like too much.
Yes.
What are we doing?
It is a big city thing. And it's not. So if I wanted to see you sort of in 2 weeks' time in New York, you've got space?
I could squeeze you in, yes.
Okay.
And it's not that I think we're less busy in New York, because
No.
I think we're famously busy.
Yes.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is wrong with you guys and your scheduling, or what are we doing that's right, or is that really true?
No, it is. I mean, my husband's family will often say, "Oh, we'd love to come down next weekend." Next weekend? That needed to be in the diary in November if you wanted to come next weekend. Things need to, it is just a London thing. There are memes that go around with, I asked my friend when they're free and they gave me dates 11 weeks later, and it is true.
I mean, how many events could you do in a night? Because in New York, I could do a happy hour drinks, a dinner, and then another drinks if I needed to.
Oh, I mean, what are we on now? I mean, to be honest, I go to bed at 8 o'clock normally. You're lucky to have me now.
Okay.
So, no, it's one event an evening.
And then most of my questions that popped up are around food, because I think that is really where we separate across the pond. And I think what is so fascinating is that there are certain things that you care a lot about, and then certain things you don't care at all about. You do not care about cummerbunds. You don't have to wear them. Did you know this?
No, I didn't know. No,
them.
Nick, you're.
That's what I read.
So cummerbunds. Do we all know what we mean by cummerbund? It's that sash for tuxedo, black tie that you wear, the pleats face upwards. Traditionally, you would wear them.
Sure.
But I have noticed at more and more events in London, nobody, including very senior members of the royal family, don't wear them anymore. And so I wrote, when I was doing the dress chapter, I thought, well, I will write, look, don't panic if you can't find your cummerbund or you don't want to wear one, because sadly, they're very nice. Sadly, they're dying.
But you're giving people a pass.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just want to clarify.
But do you wear them over here?
If I was wearing a tuxedo.
Tuxedo, yeah.
Well, to be provocative.
Say no more on that.
Yeah, I would not wear a tuxedo without a cummerbund.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you do you.
All right. And then you also don't care about, like, which way the napkin folds. Like, when you're putting a napkin in your lap, if it's very large. Some people really care.
Oh my God! Yeah,
there's a lot of ink spilled on this.
That and the which side of the chair do you get in from at a dining table?
I know.
Oh my God! People really care about this thing, and I don't think anyone in Britain certainly has ever given it any thought. It's just from whichever side you approach the table, who pulls the chair out, and again, this is where some people sort of rather doggedly will follow the rules of etiquette, sort of missing the bigger picture. And etiquette's there to help; it's not there to hinder.
But don't pretend you're all cool, because there are certain things you care a lot about.
Oh, yes.
And so I think one of those things is what you call certain meals. And so we have lunch, we have supper, we have high tea, afternoon tea, low tea. And so do you want to walk us through the meals of the day?
Yes. So this obviously depends if you are from the south of England or the north of England. And I have a very good friend who would disagree with me. But the correct phrase would be you start with breakfast, and there we're fine on that.
We agree.
Everyone agrees. Then it gets a bit dodgy around lunch, and it's called lunch or luncheon. But again, no one really says luncheon now. Maybe on an invitation, if you're being terribly grand, you might put luncheon, but lunch is fine. In the north of England, they would call that dinner. Dinner for the rest of us is in the evening at sort of, well, anywhere between 7 and 9 is dinner time. Supper traditionally was what followed dinner, and you would have maybe after you've gone to see a West End show and you need a bite to eat. We all know now that actually eating directly before you go to bed, not ideal. So now in Britain, supper is used interchangeably with dinner, but it does denote a level of formality. If I said to any of you, come over for a kitchen supper, then you know it's a nice lasagna, a moussaka.
We would not know that.
Would you not?
We would not use the phrase kitchen supper.
A kitchen supper. Well, that's why
Would
you
we?
need...
No.
No? Okay. Well, what would you call it?
If I'm coming over to your house for lasagna?
Yeah.
Specifically lasagna?
Yes, specifically lasagna.
I think we're having dinner at your house.
No, you see, dinner to me is tablecloth. I've put my candelabra out. I've got the nice china.
Uh-huh.
Supper it's a bit more rustic. You know, you're tearing off a chunk of the sourdough I've spent days making, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So you see, these things matter.
And then you mentioned something called a wedding breakfast, but that this thing happens at 4 p.m., and my brain exploded.
Could be later, actually, yes.
So what is a wedding breakfast, and why are we using the breakfast word?
So wedding breakfast it's the first meal that a couple who have just got married have as a couple once they are married. So obviously breakfast, it's the first, that's where the phrase comes from. They're breaking their fast, if again going back hundreds of years ago. So the wedding breakfast, yes, it is probably, and I know there are some Brits in the audience, probably your average Brit probably doesn't refer to it as the wedding breakfast anymore. It's just the meal, which I don't love as a phrase, but serves. I can see why people in Britain call it meal now, because if you've got different dinner, lunch, etc. But yes, wedding breakfast was the first meal that you had as a couple.
And it's not breakfast foods. It's just the food that we're eating once we are married.
No, it's not tucking into your cornflakes or anything like that. No.
Great segue. Cornflakes. So
Yes.
you quote somebody else saying that only dogs eat from bowls.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, how am I eating cornflakes? How is this? Do you guys not do breakfast cereal?
From a rimmed soup plate.
Is that
your
what I'm
answer.
eating?
Yes.
Cheerios from a rimmed soup plate.
I do, yes. I mean, I don't eat cereal, but if I were, I would.
And is it true in UK, like bowls are just not a thing?
Oh, no, they are a thing. They very much are a thing, but correctly they're not
But
a
in
thing.
the best households.
In the better regulated households, no. We don't. We might have. Well, I have, to be fair, I'm going to let you into a secret. Don't tell anyone. I have 2 bowls in my house.
And what do we use them for?
My husband. He is from Yorkshire in the north, and so he insisted we got 2 bowls.
So then, if bowls are so tacky,
Yeah.
then why did Prince Harry and Meghan have what is called, quote, bowl food at their wedding?
You're
And I'm not
proving my
familiar
point
with-
for me.
So, because the
Hello, if they're in.
because am I standing around eating out of a bowl? How was
That
it
is-
served?
That is what happened. Yes. So
I'm standing with bowls.
standing with bowl food. Yeah, little risottos and things.
So
I
I'm
forget.
holding a bowl.
Yeah, and then there's a little spoon or fork that comes in it, and you
That's-
stand whilst you're chatting to the Princess Royal, and you stand and you eat it. Yeah.
So was that a bit of a scandal when this happened?
Eyebrows were raised in Britain.
Okay,
Yes.
so scandal.
Column inches were dedicated to the bowl food. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the because I looked at the menu, what was served in bowls.
Oh, do you have it
And,
there?
Well, pea and mint risotto. Okay, I can see that in a bowl. Fricassee of free-range chicken with morel mushrooms and leeks. Like that's
It would
a
be
lot.
so much better eaten at a table with a knife and fork. You do a much
And-
better job of it.
10-hour slow-roasted Windsor pork belly with apple compote and crackling. A bowl. I'm standing up at a wedding.
Well, it sounds lovely.
Okay.
What a shame we weren't there.
So, speaking of insane dining habits, let's talk about rice.
Okay.
Explain how we should be eating rice.
Yes, this is a video that went up on my social media last week, I think towards the end of last week. It is a video I have held off filming for quite some time because I knew it was going to be controversial. Yeah. I was proved right with the reaction it got. In Britain, obviously, we should just say, rice is not really a Western food traditionally. It's something that we have with lots of meals now, but it's not originally from the West. And in Britain, whether you're eating rice or anything else, you don't traditionally turn over the fork. If you're using a knife, the knife and the prongs of the fork always face downwards. And so you would push anything, whether it's peas, which obviously we've done before, rice, anything get pushed onto the back of the fork. And actually, if you're having something like a chicken tikka masala, for example, it's often easier because you can put your chicken on the fork.
No. It is not easier.
It is easier, Nick. It is. I wish we had food to demonstrate. But yeah, I did this video, whereas lots of other cultures, you'd turn over the fork, it would come up here, your elbow's gone out, you've elbowed whoever's you're sitting next to. It looks awful, the peas have fallen off if you're eating peas, or you just don't pick up the knife and eat with a fork in your dominant hand upturned.
So, okay, this is how it should be done. I guess the question is, when I'm visiting the UK, should I do it that way? Do you want me doing it that way?
Yes. No. If it was up to me, I'd sort of deport people that you see in restaurants, tear up their passports. No, I'm joking. We start the book with a quote from a 1980s sitcom, To the Manor Born, quoting Audrey Forbes' Hamilton with when in Rome do as the English do, which is obviously not to be taken that seriously, but when in Rome do as the Romans do. So obviously, whilst I've been over here in America, I've been ignoring my knife totally, cutting up all my food in one go, like I'm 6, and spearing with a fork. That's what I've been doing.
Have you really been doing that?
No.
Okay. But I think it does beg the question, I guess, how much should we keep of our own culture when we travel, and how much should we adopt? Like, you in the book, you mentioned you were in Barcelona, and
yes.
you dined at 7:30, which is quite early.
Very early. Yes, it was my husband and I and a table of Americans dining at 7:30, whereas all the locals, 7:30, they're still finishing breakfast at that time. They weren't thinking about dinner. So I think, yes, you could perhaps, that was night one, jet lag. And so, yeah, we potentially could have. I think we did later adjust. But I would say the style of, if you find, because often with eating, it's muscle memory. So it's a lot of it is how you have grown up and what you have been used to. And if you are used to doing something, then as long as you can get it from plate into mouth successfully and it does not fall anywhere, I am okay with that. That is fine. It's when you see people struggling to eat and things do shoot off everywhere that I have a problem.
So let's talk about salt and how we're salting our food.
Okay.
So you suggest that we put salt on the rim of the plate.
Yes.
And then we do what? Explain this.
So whether you have a salt cellar, which is a little dish of salt, or you have a salt pot, which has the one hole, and it's because it has one hole you do this. You don't chuck it everywhere. And that was historically because salt was very expensive. And so in going back to ancient Rome, certain people were paid in bags of salt. And so you did not want to throw money, in effect. The word salary comes from the Latin word sal, which is where we also get salt. So you didn't want to throw money around, so you only used a bit of it. Pepper, on the other hand, relatively cheap. You could sprinkle it wherever. But in Britain, you would correctly put your little pile of salt, and then with the tip of your knife, take a few grains and put that onto whatever is loaded up onto the fork, and then eat.
So I'm individually salting each bite as I go along. Is that what's happening?
Yes.
And
it makes no sense, but don't,
No, I mean, a lot of etiquette does not make sense,
No.
and I'm not quibbling with that.
No.
I'm just, if the idea is to not draw attention to yourself when we're dining.
But you can do that very discreetly.
3 grains of salt on each little morsel?
Well, you'd take more than 3 grains, but you just take a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, put it in. But again, most Brits probably don't know that that's what's meant to do. And of course, now you go into most restaurants and you get salt served in the sort of the mills, which make it a lot easier, and you just put it wherever.
And that's okay, or do you want us milling into the corner of our plate?
Trust me, I have tried to mill into the corner of a plate, and it doesn't work. So in that instance,
Okay.
you can go willy-nilly on whatever on the plate.
Elbows on the table. I was struck that it is strictly forbidden in the UK.
strictly.
We are
Yeah.
way more flexible over here about this.
Are you?
We are. There are rules, but we are more flexible.
Well, what are your rules?
So Emily Post, 1922 Emily,
Yeah.
would say that you can do it. You can never do it when you're eating. So if you actually are like actually putting food in your face, no. But you can do it, especially in a restaurant, because she says restaurants are loud. So nothing has changed in 100 years.
No.
And she says that women should do it because if you kept your hands in your lap and you bent over to here, it looks like you're in pain. She specifically says it looks like you're doubled over in pain. And so you don't want to look like you're in pain. And so you could lean against the table to hear somebody at a restaurant. But if there's no need to hear, like in a private dinner party,
Yeah.
then you would not put the elbows on the table. Because there's
Okay.
no need for it.
Well, Emily, and we all, as we know, Emily was relatively progressive in some things and actually not in others. But yeah, I do see the logic in that. But generally, I mean, yes, definitely not when you are eating. It's in fact, it's impossible.
Well, you look like a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's impossible to eat. You don't have the traction to do that. I would say maybe at the end of a dinner party, I think this is in the book, maybe if you go around to someone's house, there's no food on the table, you're having coffee, tea, petit four and hand thrown after dinner mints, that sort of thing. You could perhaps sort of potentially put an elbow on the table.
All right, so
But
note to
not-
self.
Yeah, generally not.
And then we got to talk about 13 at dinner, which
Yes.
I had never heard of. It's insane.
Okay, let's do this by poll of hands. I'll explain what it is, and then I want everyone, if you've heard of it, heard of it before you read it in this book. If you've read the book already, put your hand up. If you haven't, remain with your hand down. So I heard about this first when my grandfather died, and there for Christmas there were then 13 of us. That was how many we had left. There were 13 of us, and because again it's got sort of semi-religious connotations, 13 at the Last Supper, Jesus died, etc. Thus what we did is perfectly logical, absolutely logical. You set for 14, and on the 14th chair you put a stuffed animal. And you put food in front of the animal, you talk to the animal. The animal obviously doesn't eat the food, which I hope is self-explanatory, because then you're not having 13 at the table. Now, hands up if you have heard of this before me. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And how many of you are British?
So, yeah, okay. Well, this was it did not go my way.
Well, so this is a real thing?
It's a real thing, and when the book came back, I think in both the UK and the US edits, we got notes with, what is this? What are you on about? But the Savoy Hotel has a wooden cat. It's in the footnote now in the book. Has a wooden cat called Casper that sits in the lobby. That they do. If you book a private dining room for 13, they will not let you sit there. They will have to do 14, and Casper the cat comes into the 14th set. It is absolutely a thing. Agatha Christie wrote there was a film based on one of her books called 13 at Dinner, which I think became a play. So it is absolutely a thing, even if quite a lot of people clearly haven't heard about it.
And we need to serve the teddy bear, like
Ideally,
full, all
yeah.
courses.
Yeah, you say it's a whole thing, and maybe it's something to do with people's teddy bears sometimes are part of the family. Are seen if it's an old sentimental teddy bear. So you're doing it as the family are all gathered.
So last quick thing before we take some questions. So we are in a room full of very nice people, and these people are polite, and we will make them more polite with your book. But what do we do about all the people outside who are currently doing a FaceTime chat with their speakerphone on the sidewalk and blocking traffic? What do we do about those people?
Waterboard them.
Okay.
No, I'm not that extreme. No, it's hard. I mean, it's so hard in this day and age. We have to raise people to our level as opposed to sink to theirs. And lead by example is really the only fair and just thing to do.
It's so not satisfying, though.
It's not satisfying, which is why I'm considering waterboarding people. But I suspect The Hague might have something to say about that.
Okay. So I think let's take some questions.
William, I'm so looking forward to reading the book, and thanks so much for coming to New York City.
Thank you.
I have a question about travel, particularly plane travel, and if you can weigh in on the way that people behave on airplanes, and particularly the way that people dress today on airplanes. It's become a come-as-you-are party, especially if it's like a flight at 6 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that question. Yes, there's something about being in a metal tin, and I think the same goes for trains as well to a certain extent, but I think the altitude for an aeroplane really does something to people's behavior and standards. And actually, I would also say airlines, probably. I don't work for airlines, even though in this jacket it might look like I do. But airlines are bending over backwards to try and make travel as comfortable as possible for people, but yet you'd think thus then you don't need to compensate with what people are wearing. And actually you can travel in something reasonably presentable. But on my flight over, there were people in sort of Lululemon, athleisure wear, flip-flops, big head, as if they were, it's only a 5-6 hour flight from London. It's not like they're doing something incredibly long, and yet people, you can change. If you want to change into something on the plane, that's fine, but at least when you're getting on and off it, look vaguely presentable. But yes, aircraft are breeding grounds for bad manners generally.
Hi, William. Welcome
Hello.
to New York. Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you. I think you mentioned this on the podcast once, but remind me again, what is your advice for etiquette with forgetting people's names? I do a lot of networking, and I'm very bad with remembering names. I know faces. As a gay man, we can get away calling people love or doll, but I always run into the fact where I see somebody and I forget their name. So what's the polite way if you forget someone's name and they start talking to you, and you don't want to be rude? What do you say to remind them, to ask them to tell you your name again so you're not rude to them?
Great. Well, you've sort of half said it, basically. You just say, please remind me of your name, rather than, oh, sorry, what's your name again? What's your name again is, well, you made no impact on me whatsoever. I haven't even bothered to learn your name. Please remind me of your name is a bit softer. It's still not great that you've forgotten the name. That's obviously, and there are other things you can do to help remember names. But please remind me of your name is just a bit softer. And generally, people feel less affronted that you have forgotten their name. And then in terms of how you can be proactive and sort of avoid having to say that, I find for me meeting and repeating people's names is good. That's if they even give their name. So many people you meet and you go, hello, I'm William, you introduce yourself. They go, hello. And what's your name? And you sound like you're at primary school having to ask that. But generally, if I meet you and your name is Rye, I would say, Rye, what sort of day have you had? And I'm actually using your name, Rye, a few times. And by me actually saying Rye's name, that's going to help me remember it, rather than think I'm just going to try and remember Rye's name, and then I'll probably forget. Or I might write it down as well. That's the other thing, depending on the scenario. Yeah. Thank you. That's a lovely question, Rye.
Hi, welcome to New York City.
Thank you.
So I had a question. What do you do if you're a teenager? How do you incorporate etiquette into your life as a teenager?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, I mean, it's. I would say following etiquette or practicing etiquette or manners. It's a bit like. It's a bit, I guess, going to the gym. It's an exercise. You have to sort of keep doing it. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And actually, manners and etiquette, they're not meant to be this restrictive straight jacket where you are so panicked and conscious about how you are behaving. It's meant to become a muscle memory that just sort of happens. So the more you do it or follow 90% of it, and the really core important stuff that matter, like salt and bowls, the more you do that, the easier it becomes. So just keep practicing. Writing thank you notes is always a good place to start as well. But anything is better than nothing at all. And just being conscious of how your actions affect others, to give quite an earnest answer.
Good evening. One question regarding when you're setting a table, and the dessert cutlery typically goes above the plate.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does the meal become formal enough for the dessert cutlery to move to the sides of the plate?
Yeah, great question. And this is, again, something that has perhaps changed in British table settings. And Jo Bryant, my colleague who edited that Debrett, she and I have quite heated voice notes about this sometimes. She is very much a progressive that advocates that it's totally fine, even in formal dining, to put them above the place setting, which is the more international American standard. If you look at sort of the Downton Abbey-esque tables, whether it's on Downton or photos of tables in the Edwardian era, you will see that, yes, nothing cutlery-wise is above the plate, and so it's down the side. I think a lot of it depends on space, however. It's just, you don't want anyone to come to the table setting and feel intimidated by legions of cutlery each side of the plate. Neither do you want people to sort of come and see messy cutlery or dirty cutlery. So it depends on your own style of entertaining. Even at state banquets, they put them above the plate. Again, and that's having spoken to footmen, it's two reasons. One, practicality, space is tight. They don't have a lot of space, but also a lot of their guests for state banquets are used to the American/international setting, and so if it was down the side, they're not necessarily going to know why it's there.
Is that called a nursery setting?
Yes, it was what was called the nursery setting, putting the fork and spoon above the...
And is the idea that my governess has done it for me when I'm a young child?
Yes, and if we're being snobs about it, the governess was normally from the north, and so it was thus wrong, so it was considered the nursery setting, and it was fine in the nursery, but not necessarily downstairs.
Noted.
Not downstairs, just
one level down.
in the dining room. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Hi. As an ex-British person who's been living in America for close to 15 years, I get almost daily people who hear me talk and then they try to mimic my accents, which is so wrong on so many levels, and they can't flipping do it. And like, what am I supposed to say? Like, shut up, like, just stop. It's just come to a point where I just want to waterboard people, as you would say.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I'm very sorry that happens. You could just sort of politely laugh and you don't actually have to say anything. I would also say, as annoying as it is, and this is where I think you know, probably we in Britain are probably better at this than other countries, that you have to suppress your thought and desire to say something, or you just go, oh yes, very good, and just move on. But yeah, it's unfortunate they're doing it, but I guess the more you make an issue of it, the more it becomes an issue. But yeah, it's not polite to mimic someone's accent in... And the thing is, if you were from, let's say, from China, they wouldn't do it. So I don't know why they feel the need to do it because you're from Britain either. So it's sort of, yeah, it's unfortunate.
Hi, William.
Hello.
Good evening. Lovely to meet you. I have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. So I'm from Spain originally, but I've lived in London and now I live here. You know, in New York, we go out a lot, you know, to dinner, you know, drinks, everything. And there's everything is to share. Basically, you go to a restaurant and, you know, immediately the servers are telling you, you know, everything is made to share and so on. And then there's a tendency, like, not to offer serving utensils or cutlery, and suddenly, like, everyone is eating out of the same plate, or, you know, someone is asking, oh, can I try this or that, which I really don't enjoy personally. So I wonder, like, if you have, you know, any tips as to, you know, how to go about, you know, politely saying, you know, I'd rather, you know, order my own, or I don't know. And then if you have any, is there a protocol on splitting the bill?
Yeah. Okay. Two very good questions. Yeah. The first one. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't love sharing food either. Mainly because I think I'm probably quite greedy, and if I order the meatballs, I want all 3 meatballs rather than to share. And if you want the meatballs, absolutely fine. Order the meatballs, knock yourself out. But I'd like the meatballs. So thus, you can't, as much as I want to say that when we go out for things like tapas or cicchetti, I don't think you can. You sort of, especially if you know the restaurant you're going to in advance, you know that it's that sort of restaurant. But what you can do in a restaurant, if they don't provide serving utensils, is just ask, could we please have some serving utensils, or could we have some extra spoons to serve? So at least that minimizes the germs if you're worried about from a germs point of view. So I would ask for that, and that's fine. The restaurant probably won't bat an eyelid. They're probably used to it, so don't panic about that. And splitting the bill, this is a hot potato. But generally, I would say, assuming that everyone had sort of the same thing and no one sort of had a huge Methuselah of champagne or something to themselves, yeah, or had cocktails, you just divide it by the number of people and be done with it. And hey, if your meatballs were £3 more expensive than somebody's tofu that they had, so be it. It's fine. But some people prefer to itemize. But you can always just avoid going out with those sort of people, generally. Is my opinion.
Good evening. I was talking to my daughter about grooming in public. You know, fixing your hair, applying makeup, the said teenager in the room. And could you please share with us why it's not so polite to do that in public and why we reserve it for the restroom?
Well, I mean, you see people. I've seen it on the subway here. I see it on the London Underground, putting eyeliner on or mascara, and I think they deserve a medal, really, because you're being chucked about. And it's amazing that they're putting this very sharp, pointy thing next to their eye, and they're not getting off the B train bleeding from their eye, and they haven't stabbed themselves. So it's incredible. I take my hat off to people that do it, but generally it's not. Sort of adding hairspray, lipstick, even lip balm to a certain extent is not considered, because it's a form of, I guess, touching oneself, really, using something else, and that's not considered polite, and it's just something that is taboo, that we have over time decided, no, ideally, don't do this. Would you agree, Nick?
Lip balm goes a little. I'm okay with lip balm.
Well, I noticed your lip balm earlier. But we were in private, so that was fine.
Yeah.
And you did not actually apply it in front of me, which is fine. Otherwise, I would have left. But, lip balm is perhaps coming to... If it's a stick lip balm, I mean, some people have the sort of the pot of lip balm, and you see them on public transport put their finger into the lip balm and then touch their lip, and you think, well, you don't want to live, do you? So you do that. That's fine.
Okay.
Obviously, you have a beautiful reading voice. Do you think you'd ever find yourself doing like an audiobook component to your book?
Oh, there is. Well, what a lovely question. Thank you. Simon & Schuster Audio are delighted that you have just asked that question. There is already an audiobook. I'm going to post at some point in the next week a nice sort of clip of me recording it, and we re-recorded bits of it for the American edition as well, for all the new bits there and there as well. So you can, if you can buy the book physically or digitally in audio or digital form as well. And it's tiring hearing your own voice for days and days recording it, but thank you for asking that question. And thank you for all of your questions. Thank you. And whilst we are saying thank you, I would like to just say a few thank yous of my own. Thank you to you for buying it, for supporting it, whether you've bought it here, audiobook, are going to buy it. Thank you to the Strand bookstore and the events team here for looking after us this evening. Thank you to James and Amy at Simon & Schuster Gallery Books for believing in me and bringing you this book. To Harriet Poland from CAA, my agents, who has come over from London for me to look after me this week, which is a great joy. To the lead company, Greta and Jordan are here, who have helped get the word out and spread the word of civility. There are lots of other people who are in the back of the book that we need to thank, but I would like you to give a big New York thanks to my friend Nick Leighton, who has done such a good job this evening.